A new school year, more new rules. What will the latest set mean for your child? Plus, new laws or cancel culture? Both, some might say, when it comes to voter registrations this week. But first, he wants to be Kansas' top lawyer, but is representing Texans in a fight with the president. That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week. This is Kansas Week, and I'm your host, Pilar Pedraza. Chris Kobach is back in the news this week, not for his run for Attorney General, but for a lawsuit he filed in Texas. A group of Texas law enforcement officers taking on the Biden administration's immigration policies with Kobach's help. Chris Kobach filed a federal lawsuit Thursday in Texas, arguing a recent Department of Homeland Security directive prevents immigration officials from doing their job, while increasing demands on local law enforcement agencies. The lawsuit came after the department issued a memo requiring officers to get their superiors' approval before trying to deport anyone who hasn't recently crossed the border or been found guilty of a crime in the U.S. The lawsuit comes from 4 Texas sheriffs and counties, as well as an association of immigration officers. According to a release from Kobach's team, the sheriff's legal complaint says ICE officers have asked to take custody of several, quote, dangerous illegal aliens, including child rapists and drug dealers, but have been denied permission. This all comes 2 months after Kobach launched his bid for Kansas Attorney General. And joining me on the desk this week to break it all down for you, we have former state senator Phil Journey, also a current district court judge and a Wichita Republican, and former state representative Jim Ward, a former also school board member for the city of Wichita and a Wichita Democrat. Thank you all both so much for being here.
He was on city council too.
That's right. That's right. Let's pull out all the resumes and go through the whole thing. Yeah. But as we look at this issue, you know, Chris Kobach is known for being involved in cases all over the country. Is it really a surprise that he's involved in this lawsuit? Phil?
I was going to ask if anybody was surprised by this because I know I wasn't. I'm not sure about the basis of this because when I read the stories about it, it appeared to me that essentially it's just a management thing that they say, you know, if you're going to deport somebody, please get approval to do that. I don't know that they're unreasonably withholding that approval. It's important to remember that more criminal aliens were deported from the United States under the Obama administration than any of his predecessors. So I don't know that it's a Democratic Republican thing. I don't know if it's just merely a reallocation of resources, which is an administrative management thing. So I just don't see any legs on this, but I haven't read the petition or know the facts, so we'll find out.
Jim?
I think he accomplished his goal when he got the media coverage, because Chris doesn't raise a lot of money, but he sure does get a lot of free media, and he is running for office. As an attorney, Chris Kobach's a joke, okay? And I don't mean that just as a partisan.
No, just because the federal judge made him go back to law school for civil procedure.
That was the only case he's tried in 10 years, and the judge sent him back to school. I'm not talking about the number of local governments that he advised in the early 2010s about illegal immigration, and they ended up paying large amounts of fines and costs because they were found unconstitutional and they deprived people of basic rights. He's running for office, and this is a way. He's confusing because he uses very inflammatory terms like illegal alien, so they're not like human beings that are fleeing some terrible things. And I agree with the judge that we all agree that there should be rules to get into our country, and if you want to get in, you should follow them. What he's mad about is those people who may have been here for a while, however they got here, most of them got here legally with the green card and overstayed their time. You can't go and arrest them randomly. You have to get permission and have to run through a process before you go and disrupt those kind of lives. We're not talking about people at the border, and he confuses that in the lawsuit and in the way he has presented it.
Well, and certainly we know that immigrant labor is a major resource here in Kansas. It's a big part of the agricultural industry, #1 industry in the state.
That's why he did not get Farm Bureau's endorsement in the governor's race, because of what he did with illegal aliens. I mean, it's obvious we do not have enough people here to take all the jobs. Yeah, and people don't want to go out to Dodge City and do that. And I hear what Jim said about him not wanting to do the retail things you have to do if you're going to run a statewide race. He's proven that he doesn't do it when he ran for governor. I don't see anything different from then. What is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
I do want to make one. I'm sorry, Judge. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, you did. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's a difference by being a joke as an attorney and not being dangerous. I think Chris Kobach's incredibly dangerous, and what he does is very. It's really difficult to see, and like using those kinds of inflammatory terms over and over again to stifle real communication about an issue that a lot of people care about. Is how do we address immigration?
People, the way to address immigration is rationally, but I mean, people on both sides of the political aisle use inflammatory terms repeatedly, just like the New York Attorney General said, I'm a terrorist. So, because
You're
of
a
what
terrorist?
I do. Yeah, that's what she said.
Oh.
That the NRA is a terrorist organization, and I'm on the membership of the board. So, the inferences are there, and they're unfortunate on both sides of the political spectrum.
Well, and just before we started recording, we were talking about both of you, are you going to run for office? With something like this, right now, as far as I know, Chris Kobach is the only announced candidate for Attorney General. Has there been somebody I've missed?
Well, when you say the word announced, there are people calling people for money so they can build their war chest to run. Mm-hmm. And there are probably 4 or 5 people who are seriously looking at running at Attorney General.
I've heard 2 Republicans from Johnson County that nobody knows. And then, I don't know who your Merrick Garland's going to be, but there's a big concern that Chris can't win a general.
Yeah. Well, I've heard Kelly Warren in the state Senate and Blaine Finch in
Those are both the ones I've
House
heard.
of Representatives for Republicans.
Yeah.
Christy Welder is a Democrat who's looking at it from Johnson County. There are a couple of other people who are not yet to the level of calling other folks for money that are looking at what it takes to put it. It's so difficult to raise the money. Yeah,
for a statewide race. And that's why some folks call politics the rich man's game.
Well, and that's why you do things like this, so you can get free media.
Exactly. And so we're going to stop giving free media. We're going to move on to the next story.
Let's go.
As new election laws took effect this week in Kansas, some activist groups have paused voter registration and education drives. Rebecca Chung of the KSN Capitol Bureau recovered that, and I give you a review of what she had to say. Loudlight, a state voting rights organization, announced in a video news release this week it would suspend its voter outreach efforts starting Thursday because one of Kansas' new voting laws makes it a felony to give the appearance of being an election official.
This means if someone mistakes you for an election official, you could be charged with a felony and imprisoned for up to 17 months. Loudlight and other civic organizations are suing the state because the new law infringes and chills our constitutionally protected free speech.
The League of Women Voters followed Loudlight's lead, also announcing it would take a step back from voter outreach. In a written statement, the League said Kansas saw incredible turnout numbers in the 2020 election, in large part due to the work of trusted, nonpartisan organizations like the League to provide voters with accurate, timely election information. HB 2183 and HB 2332 threatened to undermine this progress by criminalizing the vital efforts of civic organizations. The League added the changes in voting laws would disproportionately hurt voters with disabilities, voters of color, voters whose first language is not English, student voters, and elderly voters. The two groups, along with Kansas Appleseed and the Topeka Independent Living Resource Center, are waiting for a Shawnee County court to make an official ruling on their lawsuit. So do these laws stand when the court is done or not? Jim, we'll start with you.
Everybody's talking about the U.S. Supreme Court case that came down yesterday and saying, well, that means that Kansas. I don't think they're the same, okay? Some of the arguments being made locally are different. They're saying the vagueness of the definition section on who can be help register voters is unclear, and that's a state issue. It didn't have anything to do with the Supreme Court. The idea that you're preventing people from helping others advance vote by helping them taking all their ballots to their polling place. Those are all kind of state issues. They're not being challenged on a universal discrimination and that protected classes are being prevented from voting, and that brings up the Voter Rights Act of 65 and every year since then. So I see some differences, though unfortunately I think the court's decision yesterday makes the cases harder.
Okay. So?
I think that Jim brought up a good point, because often when judges are required to review statutes for constitutionality or appropriateness for criminal prosecution, void for vagueness is one of the big questions. And I've just wrote down here, like, I don't know what give the appearance of being an election official is, and I did not get to read the bills, but I do think that eliminating Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act on top of eliminating Section 5, what was that, in 2013 in Shelby County versus Holder, I think it is far-reaching, and it is something that we should all be concerned about. It's important to note that the Supreme Court upheld laws more strict and more difficult than the Kansas law. And so the advocates for against the bills enacted by the legislature are basically going to pursue it under a Kansas constitutional claim rather than a United States constitutional or federal statutory claim.
Talking about it being more strict, the Arizona law, if I remember correctly, completely banned one person bringing in somebody else's absentee ballot. The Kansas law basically means that, yeah, pretty much. The Kansas law is written, basically says you have to fill out paperwork that says I gave this person permission.
And you can't do more than 10 or something.
Yeah, there's
like
a limit on how many any one person can collect.
I don't know what the rational basis is. That's the other thing that we look at when we look at statutes is what is the rational basis for it. Now, Alito wrote that prevention of voter fraud before it happens is an appropriate state's goal in enacting legislation. So, I read part of Elena Kagan's dissent too, and I would suggest that if anybody wants to get a little more in depth, that they pull that opinion out. It's free. Go get it online, and spend about 2 hours trying to read it. So,
and let's break it down to what I think is a fundamental issue in all of these election law things. It is a primary, fundamental building block of a democracy, particularly a representative democracy, which is what we do. We don't all get together and vote on stuff. What we do is elect people to go up to Topeka or Washington and vote on things for us, and then we review them in elections to see if they're doing the right thing. If you make it harder to vote, you are making our democracy less. And the idea that there's voter fraud is like saying little green men from a different universe are going to come and take over our country. Okay? The number of sightings of little green men equal the number of cases of fraud we've seen in our state or our country. And it is fundamentally wrong, and it is a new phenomenon. Remember after 2000 and the debacle in Florida, there was a coming together bipartisan. How do we make it easier to vote and ensure the votes that are validly cast are counted? That's not what we do now. Now it's a partisan thing. There's a story that came out today that Trump and the state party leader of Arizona were contacting local vote counters when they were doing the recount to stop so it would leave him ahead. That kind of stuff's happened in the past, but it was always ignored and not taken seriously. Now we really do believe little green men are going to take over our election process, and that's very dangerous.
Very quickly.
Oh, let's just move on.
Thanks.
It's hard to respond to something like that. It's so far off topic. The reality is that people can cast their ballots. Sometimes it's a little more difficult. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. There are some concerns. There were some things that happened, not in Kansas, but in other states, that were reported by credible news sources that gave me pause. And I don't think they were enough to flip the election. But, it needs to be addressed, and, they're your representatives. They're what they did. Hold them accountable if you don't like what they did.
All right, and we are going to leave it at that.
Thank you.
Let's turn to the Wichita area economy now. The announcement that United will be buying a whole lot of planes from Boeing certainly put a spring in a lot of steps this week. Kate's Morgan Mobley shows us what it all means.
Chris Gibby just finished his shift at Spirit Aero Systems. He's going home to his wife and 2 young kids with a stronger sense of job security following the news of United Airlines' big purchase.
It's just great to have that feeling of not having to worry about what's next.
He's been with Spirit for 6 years and doesn't take a day like this for granted after watching 5,000 of his coworkers get laid off last year.
There's a lot of people that have just been scraping by, and this will make a big difference. Any order of that size is huge for us and a lot of the small companies around the town.
The order, including 200 737 MAXs, most of them a brand new jet, bringing a whole new production line.
The really good news for us is that out of that MAX order, 150 are for the new 737 MAX 10, which is the largest of the MAX family. And that means new production because that aircraft actually just recently made its first flight.
Daniel McCoy with the Wichita Business Journal says he believes this momentum will just keep building to what's already been a strong rebound for Spirit.
Earlier in the year, the CEO, Tom Gentile, said they were looking to bring back as many as 1,200 this year. I kind of think that's probably going to increase.
As the success trickles down to the supply chain as well, McCoy says this will bring an influx of money to the city as things are looking up on all fronts for the air capital.
It's really driving Wichita now, and I think we'll see some pretty impressive growth next year and on into 2023.
And it was just about 3 years or so ago, before the pandemic, before all the 737 MAX problems, Spirit was looking at explosive growth. Are we headed back in that direction? What do you think? You guys both followed this for a while.
I got my fingers crossed. I thought, when I first read the story, I said, oh, they just got a good deal at overstock.com, on the planes. But these are all new planes and new production, and, all the old ones are still sitting around somewhere trying to get the software fixed. I think it's great. It's going to not only help Spirit, but it's going to help all those subs out there, too. And that's thousands and thousands of workers.
This is great news. Now, remember, Wichita is like the #1 manufacturing hub in the country because of our aviation industry. We have 450 to 500 of the world-class suppliers because of this industry. And we went through some awful times with those plane crashes about a year before the pandemic. So yes, I think we're looking at an explosion of travel right now. Now the question is long-term, after people have got their pent-up vacations and trips, how much stays, and more importantly, long-term, is what does business travel look like?
Planes are full.
Right now.
Oh my gosh.
In 6 months, are people going to conferences for the week instead of Zooming it? And that's where the long-term stability in travel will be if business travel comes back.
Well, and there's a question, if business travel returns, does it return on commercial, or does it turn more toward businesses purchasing their own private jets or contracting some sort of share program with other companies?
Win-win.
Just because of the issues that we saw with COVID in the last year.
It's a win-win because we build the little ones or the business jets too, but the big ones are where the money is and where the jobs are.
They need to restore the tax credit for private aviation if we want it to take off, because that just killed it under Obama. And we've lost Learjet, we've lost Cessna. I don't know.
See, we almost went
the last
through
ones
this whole
left.
segment. Bipartisan. Almost made it all the way through.
Hey, we are. They need to restore the tax breaks.
I think we're looking at a really good 18 months.
No.
We'll see what it looks like with business. Not only just travel for conferences, but do I go out and do my sales in person? Do I, we talk about in the law. Am I going to go out to do my depositions now that I figured out Zoom and I can save hours and money on travel?
Nah.
That'll be a question.
Well,
I think Fortune 500 companies are still looking at a big Zoom component when it's you go visit them when it's time to go to dinner and close the sale.
Yeah.
Everything else is preparatory.
Well, the pandemic isn't quite over yet, as much as we would all like it to be. But Kansas schools are already having to plan for the next year. The Wichita Public Schools this week releasing their plan, which, as Morgan Mobley shows us, makes masks and vaccines optional.
I am going in second grade.
Michelle McClary is relieved her daughter Lena will start the school year in the classroom.
Last year, I really noticed it impacted her negatively when she was sent to remote school.
The Wichita School District unveiling a return plan for this fall. In the plan laid out, masks will be optional beginning next Thursday. Vaccinations are not required but strongly recommended.
Encouraging people to get vaccinated, encouraging people to stay home, encouraging people to monitor their own health symptoms, and so that we keep our community and, most importantly, our schools as healthy as possible.
Terry Moses with the Wichita School District calling it as solid as a COVID plan can be, while at the same time acknowledging it can change, especially with the new Delta variant.
We'll pay attention to the health of our community. We'll partner with Sedgwick County and listen to them in regards to guidance, and we'll be prepared to make changes if necessary.
McClary says her family will be ready for any twists and turns that may still come.
Take it as we come, or as it comes. We're not 100% in control, so we'll just see what it is when we get there.
My School Remote will not be offered based on direction from the Kansas State Department of Education, but if parents are uneasy sending their child back to the classroom, virtual learning will still be available through Education Imagine Academy.
We've always been a school of choice. We've had a virtual academy for some time. Through this, we were able to expand the services that we provide through that, and we would encourage parents to go that route.
Okay, so parents can obviously tell their kids you're getting vaccinated, presuming that the vaccines have been approved for kids of that age. But as a parent who's had teenagers, as someone who's been a teenager, you can tell your kids what they're going to wear all you want, but once they're in school, you ain't got much control over that.
I think that they pulled the trigger too early. The science out there is becoming alarming. We can look at the experience that's happening this week in Springfield, Missouri, that their hospital system's becoming overwhelmed, that 3/4 of our infections are Delta variant. Who knows what Epsilon's going to be? It's pretty apparent to me that, particularly with kids under 12 that can't get the vaccine yet, that they can certainly transmit it. And now we have the added WHO recommendation that people wear masks inside whether you've got the vaccine or not, because now the body of evidence is developing that people with the vaccine can get it and transmit it to someone without the vaccine. And it's all very disconcerting that people are making these decisions without good information base.
I think it's a good thing that the school buses are rolling in August. I think it's a good thing.
Oh, for the economy and for the parents, absolutely.
I think it's a good thing for the kids too. I think their education has been stifled somewhat by distance learning. Not that everybody hasn't made their best effort. I think getting back in the classroom is a good idea. The biggest issue in all of this, whether it be how much we can do concerts and go to sporting events and interact each other at the 4th of July fireworks, or go back to school, is vaccinated people. Almost all the new cases, all the Delta variant you're hearing about are unvaccinated people.
Yep.
And what the problems that the judge is touching on is people who are vaccinated might have an might transfer it without knowing. We don't know enough about that. Certainly kids who don't get it. Our county, unfortunately, total population is only like 35% vaccinated. If you take the kids out, it only goes up to like 44%. If you really believe kids should be back in school, get vaccinated and make sure everybody in your family gets vaccinated, because it's a critical component.
I do not have a court hearing that I don't ask those parents in family law, have you got your shots yet? And I urge them to go get them. Don't believe the fake news out there about how dangerous they are. They're not. It just has to be done. We have to get above 60% somehow. And that's basically the lowest threshold for herd immunity.
Well, and we're all sitting here on the desk because we are vaccinated.
Yep.
I mean, my side effects with a second shot, I got tired for a day or so.
Yeah.
Maybe
a lot of that
lightheaded.
depends on your blood type. If
some
you're
people
type O, you're
were,
much more tolerant.
But some people had a day of flu. I mean, I'm not going to minimize people who might have had, but most of the folks I've dealt with are more like what you said. But here's the thing: you got your smallpox. They didn't debate whether to get the polio vaccination. They didn't debate whether they're going to get smallpox. They knew that saved lives, and this vaccine saved. And we now have almost 6 months of data that show people who get vaccinated don't get sick.
Yeah, I have to face this struggle every day in court because I've got parents that one wants them vaccinated and one doesn't, and then they want them to go wrestle or play contact sports, and it is just mind-boggling.
All right. Well, we're going to move on because that is a debate that's been going on for months and isn't going to end here at this desk today.
But the judge and I could solve it. They just let us do it.
There you go.
Get vaccinated. There's so much things you can do. And if you want to do stuff, you got to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
All right. Well, finally today, let's look at Kansas water and soil quality. The EPA this week announcing plans to help the state fund a project to improve that quality. KSN's Rebecca Chung explains how.
The state is getting more money to work on a new initiative to help farmers keep the environment safe from harmful nutrients that some health officials say is a major hazard. U.S. environmental officials awarding $750,000 to protect Kansas agriculture, a booming industry in the state that could face a major threat without the proper help. Officials say nutrients that often helps with plant growth can cause damage to other areas.
The challenge is when these nutrients contribute to water quality problems, including the growth of harmful algal blooms in rivers and lakes here in Kansas.
A challenge that can be prevented with the right farming techniques, like using cover crop. Some conservationists say it's a practice that not only helps maintain the soil's nutrients, but also prevents runoff into rivers or streams.
A lot of guys just aren't quite wanting to jump into it, although there are a lot of others that have been doing it for years. There's things that can be done better.
More runoff means less nutrients in soil, which can take a toll on some of the state's leading crops. Now the state is hoping a new farmer-to-farmer program will be the solution. It's a project where farmers will coach each other in soil health, mastering different ways to protect the environment and keep water clean for people across the state.
If we provide the resources and help to convene people to get together, they're going to convene and get together, and something good is going to come out of it.
This is a 3-year project where 10 different coaches will work with farmers to develop new practices to help keep the soil and water safe. At the Capitol, I'm Rebecca Chung.
And concerns about water quality, water quantity in the state, nothing new. Are we making any headway in trying to deal with it? Jim?
Yes, and this is one area that I've been involved for 20 years. Governor Sebelius, Governor Brownback, and now Governor Kelly have very much their agriculture departments, their geological, the water, all have been committed to how do we protect that most precious resource, water. And runoff, which just means when it rains, the dirt goes with the water, and there's a lot of crap in the dirt that you don't want in your water. And this is a way to educate people, because we don't like change. And there are folks who have been doing it the same way for a long time, and this is a way to try to help educate them.
Phil?
Agriculture has an economic interest in not over applying fertilizer, herbicides, and other products just to save money and actually have a profitable farm. And the one thing I think that's missed on this is residential people, because I mean, look at Wichita. You know, we don't want an algae bloom in the Arkansas River, and I mean, how many people really read the directions when they go get that bag of 1042, you know, at Atwoods or wherever? And they misapply it and they put way too much on, and it just washes off, goes down in the storm sewer and straight out into the river. There's no treatment. There's nothing that happens to that water except it gets dumped in the river.
Yeah, well, and then of course there's all the concrete in cities that means water just runs straight out because it has nothing to sink into. So
you know, everybody wants a
a
beautiful lawn, and there's something about we may end up looking like Arizona if we're not careful. You know, if we get another drought. So we'll see.
Wow, you just took us full circle back to Southwest there from where we started.
I know.
And we are going to leave it there for the day. Phil, Jim, thank you both so much for joining me. It's been a joy having you on the desk with me once again. We'd also like to thank our news partners at KSN News, the Wichita Eagle, and Cake News for sharing their materials with us. We'd love to continue the conversation with you on social media. Just look for Pilar Pedraza TV or PBS Kansas on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. For now, stay safe and have a great week.